I would like to invite the panel members to take your seats so that we can move to the next part of this last session, please, on sustainable intensification of resilient agri-food systems. And we are going to try to bring the perspective of smallholder farming. And I would like to mention that we have three very experienced panel members: Paul Hicks, bringing the field experience, the NGO experience, Alok, Sikka, the research experience, and Degefie, Heeren, educational experience. And I would like to introduce the subject with a few slides to emphasize a bit what we have been discussing in the conference, and then I will ask the panel members to sit with us and share their experiences. But I would like the panel members to conclude perhaps with one or two reasons for optimism, because we are feeling overwhelmed with the challenges, but we would like to leave the conference as well with reasons for optimism. So please think about that, and also the audience, if at the end we have some time before lunch, to share your reasons for optimism would be a good way of closing this session. So allow me to just bring a few slides. This is just a map of many other maps about water scarcity. As you can see, it's becoming red and red and red. I hope that in the future, this could start becoming green or blue if we do a good job. And of course, this map is just highlighting the water scarcity, and probably 60% of the population in 20, 25, 30 years will be under this water security risk. So we need to really do something about that. We have a big challenge. Now, in smallholder agriculture, which is actually producing most of the food that is consumed in developing countries, the situation is more challenging. And this data comes from Ghana, actually, where, as you can see, around 300,000 farmers carry water to irrigate 66,000 hectares. So it's a lot of effort to produce food with water. And only 6% of the land, cropland in Africa, is under irrigation. It's still a lot of work to do in improving access to water. But the challenges are there. Droughts are becoming much more prevalent. So innovations are needed in new irrigation technologies, capacity building for smallholder farmers, and education to shift these paradigms, what we can do about it. Different solutions could be proposed under development, better management of water across scales, expansion of irrigation, sustainability by enhancing storage, or optimization of water use are options that different stakeholders are exploring. And, but I would like to bring the need to have a system thinking, a systems perspective from crops to regions. And we need to connect the factors that go from the plants and soils to the fields, to the farms, to the larger systems. Water is a connecting factor there, of course, and soil as well, as we were discussing this morning. And depending on the level where you are, the drivers of change are different. And we need to identify those drivers of change and support those drivers of change. But I would like to emphasize that the center of gravity for decision-making are the smallholders in developing countries who are making decisions about options for crops, for water, for soil management, etc. So we need to support that decision-making process in the best possible way. And I would like to bring to your attention the reform of the CGIAR systems. These different international centers who have been working for more than 50 years. Now we are getting integrated around 3 global science groups. So we have a genetic innovation science group dealing with gene banks and breeding, of course, including drought tolerance as a trait. We have resilient agri-food systems looking at crop, field, livestock, fish management at farm and landscape level, and of course irrigation methods are there. And we have a third group looking at system transformation at the level of policies, institutions, markets, And of course, water challenges are also there. So we are trying to bring the capabilities of different disciplines and centers to work more integrated with our partners. So just before going to the panel, water connects us all from plants to countries and regions. So let's understand those connections. And let's support smallholder farmers because they produce most of the food in developing countries, but not yet taking full advantage of the innovations that are available or being developed. Let's try to support decision maker with science-based evidence and combine the strengths of research, education, and development-oriented organizations. So our panel will bring these three perspectives, complementary perspectives that we need to connect better. So Paul from the field side, from Catholic Relief Services, Alok from the research side, and Derek from the educational side. I would like to invite, please, the panel members to join me in the table so that we can start this last conversation. And when you start, introduce yourself, where you're working, where you're based, and then share with us your experience on working with smallholder farmers from your perspectives. And if you, at the end, could conclude with the reasons for optimism, let's do that. So can we start with Paul from the field? Paul, would you like to start sharing your experience with us on irrigation or water management for smallholders? Please, go ahead, Paul.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Paul Hicks from Catholic Relief Services. I've worked in many different regions in my career of 24 years with Catholic Relief Services, including Central America for the last 14 years, in Afghanistan for about 5 years, Philippines and Albania. And in all of those places, I've been working with farmers and trying to solve issues around water security and irrigation in different types of farming systems. So I'll talk a few minutes about Oscar started us thinking about systems change, and how to analyze the challenges that we have through a systems lens. As I start this, one of the things that a refrain that we say every day with the team that I work with in El Salvador, which is keep it simple. Which is kind of contradictory to thinking about systems change, because it's complicated, it's super complex. But when we're working with smallholder farmers and we're working with them to find solutions, how do we keep clear and simple without inundating people with confusion, mixed messages, and get them too bogged down in trying to look at the options, which are kind of endless and often changing. So looking at the systems, I went through 3 of the sessions this week on irrigation, which was looking at, the first topic was focused on technical, the second session focused on financial, and the third was on policy. So looking at those 3, technical, finance, and policy, around small-scale irrigation. Then across that, in all of these conversations and in the context in which I'm working in El Salvador, we have farmers, we have private companies, whether they're agriculture companies or input providers, irrigation supply companies, and lots of other private companies involved in this space. We have the banking sector and investors. We have government, university researchers, research institutions, and then finally, NGOs, which is what I'm representing. So if we just looked at this as a matrix and looking at as a simple system, it's complicated very quickly. And I would say, arguably, and would love to have the debate, is in the case of El Salvador and most of Central America, and many of the other places where I work, the technical solutions that are needed for small-scale irrigation are already known. Obviously, there's always innovation happening. There's always new tools, instruments, better ways of doing it. But there's nothing that we're doing in El Salvador that requires something that isn't already being done in the world. So technically, we've got the solutions. And then through sessions this week and in our own experience, financially, there are a lot of mechanisms and instruments that enable farmers to get access to the resources they need to be able to do small-scale irrigation. And then third, policy. Policy is the biggest problem that we face in El Salvador and lots of Central America and other countries that I've worked in. But there are so many examples of different policy frameworks that work in different countries and complex environments that would also work in El Salvador to make things work. So in the situation I'm in, we have hundreds of thousands of farmers, or certainly tens of thousands of farmers who would like to be doing small-scale irrigation, drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, lots of farmers that are doing irrigation badly and inefficiently and very costly would like to be doing it more efficiently. So the demand is there. And arguably the resources, the financial resources are there. And in most places where we're working in Central America, there are water resources available. They need to be managed better. They need to be protected, conserved. There's a lot of issues around the water resources themselves. But generally, it's not a water scarce environment like other places that we where many of you are from and are working in Afghanistan. I saw much harder, more difficult situations of trying to irrigate crops. So all the pieces are there to make it work, but it's not working. And if you go through El Salvador and much of Central America, you'll see a lot of failed or inoperable or inefficient or losing or irrigation schemes, small irrigation districts that are not working. So that the system is not working. There's a lot of failure in it. And so how do we solve it? And this is where get into the role of what is our role of an NGO in this space? And one of the things that I look at is in the past, and I'd say throughout my entire career, it's been about getting small projects and implementing them and showing how solutions can be done for relatively small sets of farmers over a short period of time. Recently, in the last 5 years or so, it's been a better recognition of the catalytic role that we need to be playing better as NGOs, non-governmental organizations, or possibly researchers or other actors in the space, so that we can be more catalytic and working at scale, helping others solve the problems that in their own context. Yesterday, somebody brought up Elinor Ostrom. She developed the social ecological systems framework along with a lot of other researchers, which I think provides the basis for a lot of the solutions that we've been hearing about this week. And a lot of people have come up through the Ostrom School of Social Ecological Systems, maybe whether they know it or not. Mark Smith presented, I thought, a very compelling way forward yesterday for the CGIAR system and many others that are collaborating around global mission for water security. And very much what he's promoting is coming out of a collective, the collective action for water security is very much based on a social ecological systems framework and how to develop that. He referred to system levers, and that's right out of Elinor Ostrom's sort of approach to things. So what are those levers where we can make changes at scale through tweaks in policy, financial instruments, and other approaches. So that's the global level. At the local level, which is where I'm working and where as Catholic Relief Services we're working, things are local. And what we know and what we've talked about through all of these sessions is that the problems are local, the solutions need to be local. It's always great to get help, support from the outside, but what we're looking at are issues that are local. And there we have the farmers. And we've seen a lot of sessions. I've been in a lot of sessions. I've seen 3 people choke up or cry this week. And all 3 of them were farmers and talking about their experiences and how hard it is. especially when they're talking about the multi-generational issues, people losing farms, not being able to make ends meet, and just those challenges. Or people excited about what's possible, but it is the farmers on the ground and the ones who are most connected, grounded, and emotionally impacted by the solutions or not. So from there, offering kind of 3 ideas that we've been working on at trying to solve things from a systems approach. Is it possible to put on the slide? There it is. Oh. Yeah. So there's a whole approach called the development entrepreneurship, and it's very much in line with the social ecological systems framework. But we have been using this for about 7 years in terms of how do we approach things. And I'm not going to go through the slide with you, but just some components that I think are very interesting that came out in other presentations this week. One is the idea that design thinking, somebody was mentioning design thinking in a session earlier this morning. And design thinking is an approach where you don't over-prescribe or propose overly complex solutions when your problem is clearly defined and you're just trying to solve that problem. And part of it is don't solve people's problem for them. It's enable and empower them to be able to solve problems and do it in an iterative way. We're working in very complex systems, and as soon as we try and have big, long-term problems or try and impose or bring in solutions from other places into a specific solution, we get into trouble. So how are we empowering, enabling people to be able to be part of the solutions to their own problems? And it's always going to be iterative. So approaching it from there. The other is finding the champions, people who are invested and people who are making it happen. There was a guy this week, Dave Royal from the Nature Conservancy in Florida. The guy's amazing. He's a farmer, but a leader, convicted, just to make things work and help people solve their problems. And just having that one champion who's got social capital, he's got connections, he's got influence. And the way we say it is he's willing to invest his own political capital, so sacrifice his reputation, sacrifice his time to make things work. And so finding those people and then bringing them into being catalysts and helping solve problems. And your last point on optimism. So yesterday, Nicole Wall was presenting on the International Association, or a methodology for the International Association for Public Participation. And she gives me optimism, because it's hard to do these things. When you're working with water resources management or any of these systems approaches, we're working with people, and it's complicated. And so hearing her speak, it's, okay, this is somebody who's been in it. She's been at the tables where people are yelling, people are insulting. It's really difficult. And here's a person who keeps at it and sees it through and keeps building that trust. In an earlier session, people were talking about that trust over time, that you're in it to help them solve their problem. You're not there to impose it, and you're a partner with them. And I think that more and more we're seeing problems solved at the local level because of people like that are in it and working with people, connecting the dots and bringing in the resources, the experience, the insights, the wisdom that from other places, and helping them adapt them to new and specific locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. A very interesting perspective. I particularly liked your point on how to strengthen systems thinking, but at the end deliver simple solutions. I think we all have one example. We don't see the complex systems behind this, but the solution is simple. So that recommendation is very, very valuable. We can do system thinking, but the solution has to be simple. Very good, Paul. Thanks a lot for your insights and reasons for optimism on the power of partnerships. I think that is something that could enable innovations. Let's move to the research perspective. Alok, please share with us your views. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. And I'm Alok Sikka, presently with IMI as a country representative India. And I'm Professionally, by degree I'm a hydrologist and water resources engineer. And I have been working all through on the natural resource management. And my previous position, I was the Deputy Director General, Natural Resource Management of Indian Council of Agriculture Research. So I had a opportunity of working as a researcher, and then also doing a lot of field implementation together with the government and also the NGOs, and then also as a policy think tank of India, that's the Planning Commission, and where I was a member on the natural resources and integrated watershed management. So I have been in all the three spheres of my life, research to implementation to policy. And I think it's one thing which is really very, I think to note that we are talking about the systems approach, because we all have been talking about the systems, and by the way, I have been also working with the CRS. I have been helping them on the technical sides in implementing their programs on the field. And when we talk about, because that's what is happening, because now we are talking about bundling. Even the researchers are talking about the bundling or the integration, the same kind of a thing. And when we are looking into this, and when we are talking about this sustainability and the resilience, I think we cannot get away without working on a systems mode. That's very clear. Now, the way we define the system, it could be different. For me, a farming system at a farm level is a system, but how best I try and integrate the things together rather than working in silos, as we were talking in the previous session. And then moving forward, even at the landscape level, or at a watershed level, or a basin or a sub-basin level. So that's the way you define the system boundaries. Because it is for us to define the system boundaries, and because with the definition of the system boundaries, all the interactions will vary from boundary to the boundary, from a spatial to the temporal scale. But the essence remains that, yes, it has to be an integrated systems approach. And when we are looking at the farming systems, I'm a firm believer of working on an integrated farming systems mode. And that is what has been my thinking, that the people have been doing a lot of research in ICR system, because it's one of the biggest national research system. And I know how hard it was for me as a DDG Natural Resource Management to bring together not only the NRM division, but animal science, fishery, and everybody together to resolve that, to work in a farming system mode, because unless we really do it, we can't really achieve this kind of sustainability and the resilience we are talking about. And so that brings me to the fact that when I come to the water as a sector, because water is a prime mover, as an engine, as a central to all this kind of sustainability, because everything revolves around water. But the thing is how you kind of weave other things around the water in a systems mode. And so that is where it has to be context specific, because it cannot be like a formula 44 fits everywhere. So it has to be a context specific water management solutions, because that is something which is very, very important. Now, as Oscar wanted me to also talk about that, how in the one CGIR systems with these 33 initiatives where we are sitting in terms of the water research. So I'll try and share some of those kind of views, that how this is getting reflected, and what we have been thinking and working in isolation. Perhaps now we are working more in a systems mode, because we are working together across all the CG centers and also together with the NARS and the other NGOs. So this is where that about 18 of them, or maybe even more, that could be even more than that, have got water as an active research ingredient into those systems. And there are three verticals, as Oscar has indicated. One is the resilient agri-food systems, another one is a system transformation, and the third one is genetic improvement. And now you will try and see that when we are talking about the system transformation, because that is where we work largely on a bigger systems, and also in others we work on a on-farm and the farming system scale. That when we are now looking into that, how can we look into the hydrological modeling which have been done just for the sake of runoff and soil erosion, to try and see that how we do the integrated modeling surface water, groundwater put together with various scenarios to try and answer the foresight and trade-off analysis, that particularly in the water, energy, food and environment nexus mode. Because we don't want to just do the modeling for the sake of modeling, but as a tool to address the issue of bringing that, where are the synergies, where are the trade-offs. So that is one of the important things that we are trying to look into this thing through our nexus gain. Another thing is that we are talking more on solar irrigation, energizing agriculture. Because the way the agriculture is now happening around the world, a lot of dependence on groundwater. And when there is a lot of dependence on groundwater, and in India alone, we use something like 22% of energy goes into agriculture, and largely into pumping groundwater. So how then kind of think we can think of various business models, alternative energy models, including the clean energy source like solar. And we are working on that. So through this one CGIAR initiatives, we are also trying to look into various those kind of models. And also when we are talking about building resilience, nothing would work unless you have a water storages, not in terms of people who talk about the surface water, groundwater, soil moisture. Here what now we are having an approach is integrated storage management, integrated storage diagnostics. Because it is the way you try and look into it, the earliest opportunity I would like to use my stored pond water or my soil moisture, and then further I'll use my reservoir water, and when nothing is there, I'll use the groundwater, because that's more kind of a dependent in terms of the drought. So that's the kind of a thing that how we are trying to really looking into, and also looking into boosting water productivity using some kind of simple decision support systems and the decision support tool, including groundwater governance. And all the sectors, all the initiative mostly we are looking into is a climate smart agriculture, and also with a focus on climate smart land and water management interventions. Now, there are a number of ways that we are looking into. There are other initiatives where water is a very strong ingredient, and research that is a nature positive solutions. In the nature positive solutions, what we are really looking into is then trying to see that whatever are the practices or the interventions having a negative externalities on the environment, how best we can try and see that the solution which we are having will have a, rather those convert those externalities into the positivities, in trying to see that how we can look into that. So those are the kind of things, and also the agroecology, how the agroecology based natural farming systems we are working on. And then we are also working on the what we call the regional initiatives. That there are 6 regional initiatives, including South Asia and many other regions. There largely the purpose is that whatever are the water and land management interventions being done, developed by the CG system, how best we can do the promotion and the scaling up and try to do it at a much larger and the landscape level and following a systems mode. Now finally, the most important thing which was my last career of 44 years I've been trying to see, that prioritization. How do we prioritize all these interventions? We follow 2 approaches. Either we follow the stakeholders participatory approach, which is good. I am an advocate of that. At times, it does not let you know what are the availability of the natural resources. So the other way is we try and look into the water balance based prioritization approach, looking at the resource availability. Now, given the choice, we have come to the conclusion that it is not either or. You can start with a participatory approach of prioritization and then use and try and see that how best your more technological approach would try and fit into that, so that there is a better synergy. So what I would like to leave you with is that the thing is that we have got many number of things going, but how best we do the prioritization in the context of what is the kind of purpose in which we are there and what is the kind of the geography we are working with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alok, for sharing your views, combining different perspectives to find solutions which are context-specific through participatory methods. That is a reason for optimism. If we involve key stakeholders in the process, the likelihood of success increases significantly. Thank you very much. Now, let's move to to Derek on the educational perspective. Derek, please go ahead.
All right, good morning. It's a privilege to be here and have an opportunity to share with you. My name is Derek Heeren, and I'm representing both the University of Nebraska as well as the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. I've been here a little over 10 years. I'm an educator at heart and also do research all related to irrigation. So the theme of our current topic is sustainable intensification of smallholder agriculture. And I was asked to bring an academic perspective to that, and I decided to focus on the idea of capacity development. Part of it is that I'm a believer in education, but also with the discussions today around local solutions, farmer-led solutions, I know that I don't have the answers for so many different places around the world, but I can provide an education that helps people make those decisions. I also wanted to comment, I visited with, I think it was Jay from Kazakhstan, and talking about the need for capacity development to make it all the way down to the farmer level and not stop at mid to upper levels of training. And I was thinking through smallholder farmers, but then also who are the people that they work with. I think about the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, the service providers, irrigation as a service, as well as NGOs and others working on the ground. Is there a way we could provide capacity development to them? And I know there's already been a lot of work on that, but so I wanted to share three things quick. First, just a couple of my experiences. Second, share a framework for moving forward. And then last, some lessons learned. So first, in my experience here, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of students from developing countries. One of the favorite things we do is we have an irrigation field course. It's a 2-week short course. We've had people from dozens of countries around the world. It's an immersive experience where we have a little bit of lecture, just enough that we need to, but it's mostly hands-on data collection in the lab, in the field, a lot of tours, really providing a systems perspective. And then also, I really enjoy working with students on projects. For example, I had a student from Zambia, and she was interested in what if we worked together with neighboring smallholder farmers and set up a center pivot. And so she collected some data and set up a model and evaluated that. Starting a new project with a student from Rwanda who wants to improve smallholder irrigation, and so he has built a relationship with the Rwandan Institute of Conservation Agriculture, as well as a local industry partner, Kumva, who specializes in sensors and Internet of Things and apps on phones. And I'm looking forward to see where that project goes to bring those different puzzle pieces together. In terms of a framework for moving forward with capacity development, so ideas that come to mind would be, one, just some open access content online. I'm a big fan of in-person education. I'm really glad the conference is in person, but we can do a lot online, and I think many things are moving towards open access. If we really want to have an impact, having materials available open access increases impact by orders of magnitude. Maybe after short video content, maybe some online modules that would have a little bit more depth. Perhaps also would provide teaching resources for those who would get the model and then use that to train the farmers. And then my third idea in terms of a framework would be in-person short courses, and that could be hosted locally or in a whole new environment, but that immersive experience is really valuable for capacity development. Okay, so third and finally, a couple of lessons learned or specific ideas. So one of the things I've observed is that educational content in our discipline needs to have a balance of technology and the fundamentals. The high tech is exciting, and fueling the interest of the learner is critical. And there are a lot of technology options out there, and it's great to learn about them and their applicability in different situations. But we also want to help students grow in the fundamentals, and the students often appreciate that less at the time, but the fundamentals stay with them throughout their career and help them navigate to the changing situations that they find themselves in. Also, I was going to mention the importance of social media. I'm not young enough to be good at social media, but I recognize that that's how the world turns right now. And for connecting with the younger generation, having a social media presence is an important part of any outreach program. I would mention experiential learning. Again, maybe it's part of the younger generation, but having hands-on experiences, learning, putting it into practice, and closing the loop. How did it work? Now what do I know that's different is essential. And then last, any sort of capacity development efforts like this would need a variety of partners from educational institution, but even more important, local partners who are on the ground in the targeted area who understand what kind of educational outreach would be most effective. I'm going to wrap up there. My optimism is what gets me out of bed in the morning is seeing students learn. We have students that are full of energy, ready to solve the world's problems, and I think we see a lot of potential for change.
Thank you. I share that view. Young people full of energy gives reasons for optimism. And you're contributing with capacity development to the new generation of scientists or agriculturalists in general, which we need to change perspectives. I like your also reason for optimism in the role of open access of information, which those of the previous generation didn't have. And this is a very important asset. So thanks a lot to the three panel Derek in the last case, and we have 3 minutes for any of you who would like to express the reason for optimism and frame your question to the panel members with that perspective. So any of you would like to share your reason for optimism based on what Paul, Alok, and Derek said, please go ahead. We have a few minutes before lunch. Please.
Maybe just a point of clarification from Paul. You talked about resources for irrigation, small irrigation, not being limited, not being a constraint, or being available in the parts of the world where you come from. Where are they getting this money? In what form? What are the packages that are available? Maybe we can get the ideas and use that in Africa. Thanks.
Any additional topic before passing to the answers? Any additional question or comment? All right, Paul, please.
So when I referred to resources, I was referring to resources in 2 ways. Resource the water, whether there's enough water to be able to do irrigation, and most of the places where we're working, there is relatively, there is water available. It needs to be managed, protected very efficiently. The second was financial resources. And what we're looking at is, in almost every case, if we are working with a farmer or farmers, group of farmers, and we enable them to be able to irrigate, the business model is usually pretty strong. That at least we're going to reduce their risk to drought if we're looking at supplementary irrigation, which is almost always the case, and then just profiting, being able to produce more crops in different season, they're going to do better off. So the business case, for the most part, is strong. And in that case, there is a tremendous amount of financial capital in the world looking for a return. And so irrigation, very often, it provides you a good return on investment. And especially when we're looking at smallholder farmers, there are many avenues or channels for impact investment, where it's below market rates for those types of investments, especially when we're working with women and other marginal groups. So it's there. How to make that work, that's the systems approach. So that's how are we working to develop a solution to the context in which we're working in, with all the complexities that are there in every situation. And my point was, I think the role of an NGO and others involved in that is to play a catalytic role, connecting the dots, helping build the trust and the partnership to make these solutions work. And it's not a quick solution. It's not something that you can design on your spreadsheet. It has to be, you have to persist and be around and be willing to share the risk and the failures with people so that you can get right back in and look for and improve on what you're doing in an iterative way. I hope that was helpful. But would love to talk to you about where you're working and you know, types of ideas we're working on and how they might be adapted.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the panel members. Please a round of applause to them. Just to conclude with one statement, the value of partnerships and system thinking to develop practical and context-specific solutions. I think this conference is showing the need to connect better, and when people connect, minds connect, creativity connects, and innovations can be developed. So thanks a lot for coming. You are released now for your lunch. Thanks a lot.